Meat production, standard industry, halal, kosher. What are the actual differences? Meat comes from the supermarket. Wrong. It also comes out of the window in a burger drive. To all seeking safe space, happy sunshine. Switch to another video. Children, this will be very boring and sad, very sad, boring and sad. If you are a fan of Poopa Pigs or Sponge Poop Square or America Erwache, sorry, American Be Woke, you don't want to watch this video, in which I compare the standard industrial meat production with kosher and halal, because meat are parts of the body of animals. For all horror-loving pervs, no pictures. But to speak kindly about producing meat means to lie. Still, there is no racism charge on provoking eat meat phobia. It's actually woke. Meat too. And if you eat meat, especially criticizing either common slaughterhouse or demonizing kosher or halal as uncivilized torture until we've got yet an affordable protein synthesizer. Last time I heard a steak by printer is 50,000 bucks. Critique is informed on facts telling don't like about what is instead of what I imagine. The difference between critique and defamation is the same as between perjury and testimony. Perjury is not your truth. It's a lie to damage without reason others. Also, for the consumer of meat, it's useful to know how it's been done. You are what you eat. In more advanced beings than bacteria, the last step to die is brain death. Sorry, cows can understand on the level of a 3-year-old. Chickens can't really understand anything. If you don't chase them from the sun into the shadow, they will stay suffering in the sun and die of heat stroke. Every death ends in brain cells no longer being supplied by nutrients. And especially lack of oxygen causes immediate cell death. In case of kosher Schechten and halal, the brain has no blood supply at the end. The industrial slaughter, so-called shooting, a cerebral hemorrhage crosses the vessels. The skull isn't pierced as the brain is also served as a dish. So, industrial slaughtering is comparable to an hemorrhagic stroke, and slaughter kosher and halal to an ischemic stroke. The ideal case for normal industrial slaughter method would be, simply put, it roughly means knockout, hit the skull with a pipe, usually using a cylinder driven against the forehead by compressed air. The impact initially creates a severe shock to the frontal cortex, the part calculating consciousness. The shock wave knocks out the animal. The brain in mammals is floating in a liquid inside a balloon of hard skin called dura mater. The shock wave throws the brain against the skull, and due to the pressure, blood vessels rupture and instead through the brain deliver nutrients to the neurons. The blood floats around the brain cells, blowing up the dura mater balloon, which is confined in the skull, and heightened pressure is crushing the thinking sponge before the animal wakes up from the KO. But if the skull crushes, the dura mater has space to widen. Less pressure occurs despite hemorrhage. The brain image occurs slower, gaining time for the cow to become half conscious before death. Worst case, should the dura mater be torn by skull splinters, then the bleeding doesn't build up pressure in the brain sac, so fatal wounded in the long run. No ambulance with a veteran brain surgeon rushes into the slaughterhouse. The animal will wake up, and what happens, unfortunately, it surely wakes up from the pain being torn apart by chainsaws. Only that the chainsaw teeth are quicker than those of wolves and lions in Mother Nature. It's like being quartered in the Middle Ages. Smaller animals are electrocuted. In the best case, the flow of the current overloads the brain nerves in the speed of light faster than thought. Why thought slower than pure electricity, as the brain uses electricity also? Because alive, in addition to electrical transmission, a contact between outgoing line from the first neuron called axon and incoming line of the next neuron called dendrite is different. In this intersection called synapse, the electric signal provoke a chemical reaction in the contact plate of the first neuron, causing chemicals called neurotransmitters being ejected to the plate to the next input line. Then these neurotransmitters produce a second chemical reaction on the plate of the following neurons line, which is called dendrites, which provokes an electric volt reinforced by the second neuron, which sends to the third neuron, and so on. The reason to switch from electric to chemical back and forth and back is to slow down thought, enabling a sequence in order instead of everything melted into a noisy flash. all brains is firing together is called epilepsy. Myself epileptic, I can't be conscious during the crisis as no thought can be formed. Ideally, overcharged jolt from outside flows through the brain, no chemical electric back and forth, therefore faster than thought, grilling the brain before it can think, perceive, or react to anything. Since the body itself reacts to electrical signals from the brain, it also does to electricity that comes from outside. So there are strong cramps, and it looks very horrible. Like a dead fish jumps thrown into salt water. However, since the transmission in the body differs from animal to animal, it happens that some animals are only paralyzed but still conscious. Chicken. Birds lose their heads, and the nerve string in the spine is excited by being torn apart. Excited as in strong, stimulated, not happy. If you ever had hit with a hammer on your thumb, the nerve of transmitting pain are excited. You are very alert, you are very not happy. And except if you are a masochist. In the French Revolution, guillotines were tested on animals first and observed. The head stays alive for a few seconds in sheep or cows, but since a chicken's head is very small, it is only a fraction of a second. However, many movements occur unconsciously from the spinal cord in a chicken, calculated. And I remember being astonished seeing the body of a headless chicken flying on the roof. So therefore in fabrics are clamps holding the chicken, except for cheap chicken nuggets when the animal gets alive into the grinder. These are the methods officially tolerated by all EU countries, except by animal rights activists. Though also eating meat, I have not yet seen a militant vegan lecturing a lion at a safari, and regarding our physical body, we are animals. Thought enables us Homo sapiens to act against our pure, natural, in fact animalistic desires in the case they are harmful to our survival. Ignoring our nature doesn't make it disappear, it only lets the animal free as we were in the Stone Ages. Consequently, the only society working with pure animalistic desires fulfilled has the comfort of Stone Ages, in which society falls back when only desire is what you think you deserve is their only behavioral guideline. In a slaughterhouse today, with an execution of 200 cows in 8 hours as industrial average, this means subtracting lunch break, 2 minutes between hit and dismemberment. Not much time to ensure yourself that the 800-kilogram cow does not wake up when it's cut up. Halal is only halfway industrial possible. Online you can read Quran, Hadith, Sirah, Tafsir for free, as well as the rants of the Torah, for example. Now, if accusing me for defamation, I can publicly show and read passages unfiltered. Halal is the Arab word for empty. Since in Islam and Judaism the consumption of blood is prohibited, the goal is in Halal, besides killing the animal before eating it, which is a good idea, that as much blood as possible is pumped out of the body during the occurring death. As this requires a heartbeat sent by the brain, the animal is placed on its back if the aorta is cut, so that the head doesn't lose blood too quickly. In the industry, the animal runs into a holder and the exit of the head closes like an iris around the neck. According to several studies, applying pressure on animals' body has a calming effect. Outside of slaughterhouses, this is in human society known as hugging. The cow holds the machine, turns the entire animal on the back, and then the throat is cut. In order to make the time to death as short as possible, but still compliant to Sharia, the animal is then first lifted, taken by its legs behind, with the crane for maybe 3 to 4 seconds. Again on the floor, it's done in the thigh, as here by the animal after the initial burn gets unconscious. Though you could reproduce that by rummaging in a power socket with a hairpin, don't try this at home. But also, the cramps in the whole musculature press the blood out. And I'm talking again about the halal slaughtering, not about your power socket. The seemingly most horrible moment of cramping animal is the moment with the least suffering, brain-stunned cramps from outside induced. Due to exsanguination, all animals are in contrast to the praised profound slaughter, already dead if these are dismembered. Always. In kosher slaughter, the goal is not to lose maximum of the body's blood during slaughter. For this purpose, extracting blood from the meat after slaughter, death verification, checking each animal carcass for illness, then dismembering the meat, and then the meat is washed in water and pounded in salt for at least 30 minutes and washed again. As that means blood isn't pumped out during the animal's death, kosher meat is not considered halal. The aim of Shrita kosher butcher is that the brain quickly but steadily, without shock, loses the blood supply so that the animal mind drifts away and dies. I had a stroke. Details were instantly no suffering occurs below on first-hand testimony. Therefore, shooting at the moment of the occurring throat cut in kosher slaughter is not in contradiction to halakha, those kosher rules. The animal becomes starkly unconscious by and also dies. And in countries like Germany, this is as demanded down. The animal gets both main brain arteries and veins cut at the neck. The animal is not on the ground, as the interest isn't blood loss of the body, but blood loss of the brain, due to gravity pouring out, not by being pumped by the heart. There are also some rules for the how to cut, and how to sharp, and how long the knife has to be, even for the place and the person who does the slaughter in halakha. All this reduces the number from 200 down to 10, at best 12 animals per working day. That makes kosher meat expensive compared to the other. As a rule, the animal must not see any blood, and not the blade, and of course no dead animal. In the Torah it states that no animal should witness its offspring getting killed. And in the Mishnah it's considered impossible to know each cow's family tree or social relation ties. Which is why the corresponding room must be sparkling clean every time nowadays done with a high-pressure water cannon. The slaughterer must cover the animal eyes with one hand and use the other to guide the blade, and to cut in one move and deep. As this is not possible on stressed animals, animals must be calm. Hurry doesn't do that. There's no way to bruise a kosher giraffe steak, as nobody has arms long enough to cover the giraffe's eyes while cutting the aorta. If you ever experience a cut in the flesh deep, you know that, contrary to the very painful paper cut, after a deep sudden cut there's a period in which you don't realize being cut yet. Nature swore to give us time to flee on the trees from the saber-toothed tiger. The blade for kosher slaughter must be twice as long as the neck diameter. The blade has to be checked every time before the cut about any unevenness, which is tested by sliding the back of your fingernail along each side. The tip must be rounded. If it doesn't slide smooth on the fingernail test before, it's not kosher. Grinding stone has to be in place. Any rule broken, and it's not allowed to eat those for those holding kosher that meat. Though wasting food is forbidden, according to the Torah, a torn animal eaten by wild animals should be fed to dogs. But I haven't seen any dog food from a border collies mentioning to be produced from kosher disqualified meat. The intrinsic value of each human is in Judaism equal, but only Jews are chosen to oblige to the rules for kosher, and therefore the otherwise perfect meat has to be given to anyone who's interested, and even if no human being wants it, it can't be thrown away. It must become dog food. According to Mishnah, they earned a treat. If you now suspect that maybe sometimes someone does not totally uphold all rules to your satisfaction, then you understand why Haredi, that means Orthodox Jews like us, trust their main favorite kosher seal, which indicates who is controlling each kosher butcher. Independent outside food control, independent from additional government inspections, are a halachic rule too. We love rules. Here in the kosher method too, all animals are already dead when it comes to dismembering, because there are also rules to verify the death first before a health inspection called glad, that's verifying each time on each already dead animal the surface of the lung is smooth. Any health inspection by a government is additionally. Only then the animal is dismembered. In 1994, a study about kosher slaughter of cows by the Imperial London College had tested whether there were any reflex pulls during the shrita. There was no EEG, but there were scientifically confirmed by EMG no reflexes from the microsecond before the blade touches the animal until death. Imagine this test in industrial electrocution, which is not kosher, that we discussed before. In order to ban kosher in New Zealand, unlike halal, in 2017, there was a study by a certain Mr. Sabov in 2016, which, while reading, seemed to me very disturbing and totally against any kind of halacha I ever read, I ever seen. The study claimed to have refused any technical advice by Jewish slaughterers in order to be neutral. They bought a 24.5 centimeter, that is 9.4 inches long, kosher knife online, which would be suitable for slaughtering kosher at chicken, and apparently sabered at cows' necks with this letter opener. The average knife of a big cow has a diameter of 80 centimeters, that's 31 inches. More than 4 times longer than this online, don't know. So 160, that's around 60 to 70 inches kosher Schechter knife, is more like a kind of a long samurai sword scalpel with rounded tip. Remember that halacha requires twice the length of the neck diameter of the corresponding animal and cut in one go, which is why we do not use a sharpened butter knife, like the New Zealand government shoved into Mr. Sabo's hand to play blind cow a la the Ash method. Also, there was no indication if they checked each time the knife for being sharp enough. No obligatory grind stop was mentioned by being in place either. Short, New Zealand tortured cows with a chicken knife to death, called that then Jewish, and reported the cramps they caused as proof to ban kosher. Making up stuff or leaving things out like the word "not" in the Ten Commandments is how anti-Semitism operates. Maybe they make a career now by moving to Belgium as cannibal wagon designer in Aalst. You know, Belgium, that's the home of Leopold II, the butcher of Africa, the country that gave recently safe haven to the 2015 Paris attack terrorist Salah Abdeslam, the home of Dutroux and his new definition of kindergarten, the country in which the European Union Parliament made the European Union of Nations into a European institution in which we are all institutionalized. When researching this video, I was initially much more negative about halal, since the anti-kosher activists show the top worst examples of halal slaughter going wrong. I still find kosher better, but I have to admit that the animals slaughtered halal do not become fully conscious for the motor chain massacre, which is better, and even a hunter blowing Bambi's brains out is much better than that. I also witnessed that in countries with large rural regions, the isolated farmers slaughter a cow while the animals are standing by cutthroat because suffering animals are fatally dangerous kicking. Ethical behavior is healthy. I myself, surviving an ischemic stroke, experienced that the interruption of the blood supply to the brain is equivalent to an extreme drug high, which results from the fact that our brain produces the ultra-hard drug N-dimethyltryptamine, DMT, under the shock of oxygen deprivation. In an hemorrhagic stroke, which occurs at the skull crushing method, the brain swims in oxygen-containing blood while getting crushed. Though the brain itself has no pain receptors, either to too high pressure inside of the dura mater or tears in the dura mater cause a headache like an harsh meningitis. Halacha rules can be found in the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Because of the demands and obligations, a shochet, a kosher butcher, has to learn the details that aren't in the short version, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is a version shrink to 1,720 pages, describing the everyday obligations on the standard of the 18th century. And that Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is in every bookshelf of average Moshe Pippin, just in case you want. Contrary to New Zealand, read objective for yourself the sources in detail. Shulchan Aruch Harav. Sweden didn't. They believed Sabbath.